In today's world, the ability to influence others is akin to wealth. Yet, many navigate this landscape without a clear understanding of their own currency. They often lose their grip on power by desperately seeking attention. What if the key to influence lies not in shouting, but in the art of silence? In their quest to persuade, they become forgettable. When they attempt to assert dominance, they find themselves overlooked. Modern authority doesn't manifest through loud proclamations. Instead, it thrives in the stillness of the right moment. It resembles an individual who remains silent, yet subtly guides the actions of those around him. While you scramble for recognition, someone else is skillfully reshaping reality without ever making a mark. These individuals don't simply participate in the game, they are the architects of it. They don't plead for influence, they master the very mechanics of it. This isn't merely instinct, it's a well-crafted doctrine. Give us a like if you learned at least one new fact that genuinely changed your perspective today. Support high-quality, research-driven content. Subscribe to the channel. These tactics have been honed over centuries, articulated by one of history's most calculating minds. His name, Machiavelli. If he were alive today, he wouldn't be engaged in online debates or delivering motivational speeches. Instead, he would exist in the shadows, unseen and untouchable, yet wielding control through whispers and subtle cues that no one could trace back to him. These are the psychological strategies Machiavelli would employ in our era to manipulate anyone, regardless of their power or defenses. This isn't speculation, it's the very framework of influence. Machiavelli recognized that the gravest error the weak make is to attempt direct behavior modification. His approach would be to infiltrate the mind. For once you occupy a person's thoughts, all else follows. He would plant a notion early and then vanish. A statement like, "Have you ever noticed how those who act swiftly aren't usually fearful?" isn't mere advice. It's a seed. From that moment on, whenever they hesitate, they'll recall that thought and act accordingly. Not because someone instructed them, but because that idea feels inherently theirs. This concept ties deeply into identity. You don't persuade people to act. You make them believe they already would. Machiavelli would also disarm others with warmth to influence them precisely, understanding that people are often wary of coldness. Could the most powerful manipulation be the kind that goes unnoticed? He would don charm as a disguise. In contemporary settings, he would smile in meetings, compliment his adversaries, and laugh at the appropriate moments, all while nodding frequently. But none of this would be genuine. It would simply be a strategy. Once you're perceived as safe, people begin to relax. They open up, share more, and trust more. That's when you can slip in a single remark that reshapes the entire conversation, a gentle nudge that realigns their focus. A seemingly innocuous question can anchor your control. Modern manipulation is not about aggression. It's a precise, surgical operation, masquerading as friendliness. While others try to assert dominance through force, Machiavelli would thrive on comfort, striking from beneath that facade. He would establish predictability, only to shatter it later. People fear what they cannot foresee, and fear is the most genuine form of respect. So, you begin by being consistent, available, clear, and friendly. You lull them into a false sense of security. Then one day, you change. A delayed response, a curt remark, a colder tone with no explanation. Suddenly, panic sets in, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've become unfamiliar. It's in that gap between their expectations of you and the reality of who you are becoming that your control begins to flourish. They'll lean in, strive harder, and wonder what has transpired, trying to reclaim the version of you that never truly existed. Machiavelli didn't strike with brute force. He created an emotional imbalance and allowed the target to attempt to restore it. Furthermore, he would make himself indispensable, only to then withdraw. People crave reliability, so provide them with what others cannot. Solve problems that go unnoticed. Offer clarity when confusion reigns. Make them feel secure when the world feels chaotic. Then, retreat, not with cruelty, but with grace. When you're gone, they'll feel your absence, not out of necessity, but because they've grown accustomed to your presence. Dependence often masquerades as strength until one finds themselves alone with it. What if the true masters of influence aren't the loudest voices, but the quietest shadows? The true power move lies not in demanding attention, but in crafting a void, then becoming the sole individual capable of filling it. Machiavelli wouldn't dispense comfort indiscriminately. He would do so with impeccable timing. Once they lean on him, he'd step back just enough to leave them unsteady. He would utter a phrase that fundamentally alters their perception of self, for many individuals do not truly know who they are. They exist in reflections, becoming what others project onto them. Machiavelli would reflect something strategically significant. You're formidable when you cease second-guessing yourself. You possess intelligence beyond what others perceive. You wouldn't need to justify yourself any longer. Deliver these lines once, then fall silent. They will ponder them for days, weeks, even years, because you haven't merely offered advice. You've provided a lens through which they can view themselves. This lens flatters, challenges, and shapes them. Now, whenever they ascend, they'll think of you. And in times of struggle, they'll yearn for that reflection once more. This transcends mere influence. It's about imprinting on their very essence. Another tactic involves obscuring intentions, compelling others to fill in the blanks. For certainty brings safety, but confusion wields power. Machiavelli wouldn't lay bare his desires. He'd allow others to speculate. One day he might be supportive, the next distant. One moment warm, the next inscrutable. Not out of instability, but because they need something to pursue. The mind instinctively chases what it cannot define. You don't need to explain your silence or clarify your motives. Allow the ambiguity to do the heavy lifting. People will craft elaborate narratives in their minds, striving to make sense of your inconsistencies. They won't cease their analysis until they feel they've unraveled you. And if you're shrewd, they never will. Confusion breeds obsession, and obsession creates a gravitational pull. You don't push, you orbit, and soon they will find themselves revolving around you. Each interaction becomes an emotional imprint. You don't impose. You create a gravitational pull, and eventually they will find themselves drawn to you. Each encounter leaves an emotional mark. This is your advantage. If your goal is to influence someone, don't waste your efforts trying to validate a point. Instead, make them feel acknowledged, valued, and empowered, even if they aren't. Then, step back. The next time they experience feelings of neglect, invisibility, or insignificance, they'll think of you, not because of your kindness, but because of your distinctiveness. While most people merely make noise, you leave a lasting imprint. Individuals tend to gravitate back to whatever elicits the strongest emotions. Even if those emotions are based on a facade, You reflect their inner turmoil before guiding them towards clarity. You understand that people trust the reflections they see of themselves in you, not the persona they present to the world, but the hidden version they keep locked away. Machiavelli wouldn't cater to the facade. He would engage with the very aspects they fear. You don't easily trust. Neither do I. You despise vulnerability. That's what makes us similar. You've been underestimated your entire life. I can see it in your silence. These aren't mere compliments. They're invitations. At this moment, they sense that you're not just in sync with them, but that you're the only one who truly comprehends their shadows. This is what intimacy looks like. And once you establish intimacy, you gain proximity. But you don't linger in the shadows. You gently guide them out, piece by piece, almost imperceptibly. You become the remedy for the part of them they loathe. And people rarely abandon what brings them healing, even if it comes with pain. He would communicate in ways that linger, while others merely speak to react. You engage with echoes. Machiavelli wouldn't rush to win in the moment. Instead, he would drop a seemingly trivial remark that would resonate later. You'll soon understand why I chose to remain silent. One day, you will grasp what I held back from saying. When that realization strikes, I hope you remember this moment. These statements don't resolve anything, don't correct behavior, and don't educate. They linger in the mind. Because now, every future misstep they make feels like something you foresaw. And people tend to follow those who appear prophetic. The less you articulate, the more your words resonate later. You don't speak to alter the present. You speak to claim the future. He would dismantle their defenses by creating a false sense of security. Machiavelli wouldn't bulldoze through barriers. He would persuade you that there's no danger. So, you ask questions in a calm manner. Never raise your voice. Agree more than you oppose. You make them feel brilliant, validated, and in control. You allow them to believe they are steering the ship. And while they bask in that feeling of security, you subtly guide them toward your desired destination. When they arrive, realizing you've been shaping the course all along, they won't feel deceived. If you had to summarize the video's core paradox in one sentence, what would it be? Write it out below. Let's discuss this below. They'll feel grateful because you safeguarded their ego. People are more inclined to follow when they believe they're in charge. You don't seek recognition. You desire compliance. And Machiavelli never sought the spotlight. He positioned himself as indispensable in the backdrop of every decision. Lastly, he would leave things unresolved. Everyone craves closure. They long for endings, resolutions, and certainty. So, don't provide it. Machiavelli would leave dialogues unfinished, messages unanswered, and moments unfulfilled. Why? Because people gravitate back to incomplete narratives. They return to silence, dissect pauses, and pursue interpretations. You might say, "There's more I could share, but I won't." Or, "I'll let you figure it out." Or, "This isn't the right moment, but it will make sense in time." And just like that, they lean in. That leaning is power. You never need to pull them again. They'll chase the void you left behind. And what's more captivating than someone who almost made you feel complete? Someone who allowed you to depart without closure, yet left you obsessed with discovering it. After employing these tactics, after executing your strategies, what unfolds next? What occurs after you've embedded silence within their minds? After you've become the echo they can't help but pursue? You needn't utter another word. because now they speak on your behalf, defend you, and adjust for you. They revolve around you not out of obligation, but because you've conditioned them to crave your presence. This is the profound understanding Machiavelli possessed, surpassing any strategist throughout history. True manipulation doesn't conclude with an action. It culminates when the individual reshapes their identity in response to your absence. Initially, they experience a sense of disarray. They can't articulate it. They simply feel that something is amiss. You once reacted swiftly, offered more, and provided certainty. But now, you don't. Not in an aggressive manner, but in a way that leads them to question themselves. Not you. They ponder, have I changed? Did I do something wrong? Why do I feel uneasy? And they don't. That's the moment they begin to adapt, becoming kinder, gentler, more engaged, more emotional. And you simply breathe, for now, they are no longer responding to you. They are responding to the person you once were. That's manipulation. You don't take from them. You inspire them to give more willingly. Then, identity confusion begins to take hold. And this is where it becomes perilous. Now, they don't just feel disoriented. They begin to change gradually, imperceptibly. They imitate your tone, reflect your reasoning, and mirror your silence. Why? Because you've established yourself as the benchmark, the reference point. They no longer act on instinct. They act based on how you might perceive their behavior. What would he think if I said this? She wouldn't approve of this tone. I should emulate them. They've internalized your perspective, even in your absence. They don't label this as control. They refer to it as respect. But it's not. But it's not. The guise of submission masquerades as self-improvement. And yet, your voice remains silent. If only Machiavelli were here, he would undoubtedly be amused. Next, we delve into the concept of behavioral looping. You've now orchestrated the loop. In moments of disconnection, your target feels compelled to exert more effort. You maintain your distance. As they invest more of themselves, you provide just enough warmth to keep them tethered. Then, you withdraw once more. This doesn't lead to rejection. Rather, it fosters attachment. They become convinced that the issue is solvable. They just need to strive harder, say the right words, or be better. This is the essence of addiction. You've taken on the role of the dealer, and they pursue your approval as if it were vital to their existence. As Machiavelli observed, men are driven by two dominant forces: love and fear. You've carefully manipulated both. They cherish how you once made them feel. They dread the thought of never experiencing that sensation again. Thus, they find themselves trapped in the loop, silently pleading for your validation, striving to please through their actions. And as they give more, your need for their efforts diminishes. This intricate dance leads to a phenomenon known as emotional branding. When your control becomes entrenched, they encounter someone new and instinctively compare them to you. A simple phrase can trigger memories of how you articulated it. They hesitate before responding, pondering how you might have reacted. You transcend mere memory. You become a benchmark. Their mind has carved out a niche shaped like you, and everything else must navigate through that framework. This is the mechanics of emotional branding. It operates not through logos or slogans, but as an indelible psychic imprint. It's about the feelings you evoked, the self-doubt you instilled, and the insatiable craving for validation they could never attain. It's all embedded now, and you haven't uttered a single word. At last, you establish silent authority. You cease communication, withdraw your guidance, and vanish. Yet, they continue to act as if you are observing them. They think in your voice, mimic your cadence, and pause in your silence. They seek your approval in new relationships and feel a sense of betrayal when it doesn't resonate like yours did. You've become a haunting presence, a shadow that influences their daily lives. And should they ever confront you, demand answers, or seek closure, you remain unresponsive, just as Machiavelli would advise. True power isn't demonstrated through constant presence. It is measured by the influence you wield after you've retreated. You've infiltrated their thoughts, rewired their responses, and branded their emotions. However, mere influence is insufficient for Machiavelli. He sought not only to be followed but to be obeyed, not through intimidation or dominance, but through a more insidious force: complicity, the kind that drives them to betray others to gain your favor, to lie in defense of your reputation, to harm themselves to remain close to you. And the brilliance lies in their belief that these actions are of their own volition. Because the pinnacle of power isn't when people admire you. It's when they fear losing the identity you've allowed them to cultivate. One method is to encourage them to compromise for your sake. If you desire control, don't demand loyalty. Instead, let them willingly offer betrayal. You never say, "Tell me what they said," or "Take my side." Rather, you might say, "I won't ask you to choose. I trust you to do what's right." You always manage these situations well. Now, the burden of decision rests on them. They lie for you, shield you, and sacrifice others to remain in your good graces. Once they've committed these acts, they belong to you. Because guilt binds deeper than love ever could. Once someone has betrayed others for your benefit, they become fearful of you walking away. They won't want to lose you because you possess knowledge they wish to keep hidden. More importantly, they've already invested in you. People fiercely guard what they've compromised to hold on to. He would ensure that he was never the one wielding the knife. When the moment arrives to sever ties with someone, sabotage a rival, or end a relationship, you take no action. Instead, you let them do it for you. You drop subtle insinuations, asking, "Have you ever noticed how he only appears when it benefits him?" Or, "I don't know. I just get the sense she speaks about you differently when you're not present." Or even, "It's probably nothing. Just be cautious." Now they begin to observe, second-guess, and distance themselves. You've made no accusations and forced no reactions, yet the wedge is firmly planted. When the relationship crumbles, they don't attribute blame to you. They turn the blame upon their own awareness. Meanwhile, you remain pristine, untouched, and respected. This is the epitome of Machiavellian mastery. You operate from the shadows, never appearing in the aftermath. He becomes the keeper of their secrets. For the more someone confides in you, the more ownership you gain. You don't demand confessions. You listen with such grace and genuine curiosity that the truth emerges effortlessly. Now, you are not merely a trusted confidant. You are the sole guardian of that part of them. As long as you hold it, you possess them not through threats, but through your very presence. Even if you never mention it again, they will remember what you know. And that knowledge, that silence, binds them to you in ways that fear cannot replicate. They don't want you to use it, yet they understand you could. and that realization alters their behavior around you. They speak more softly, tread more cautiously, and strive to remain in your favor. When people entrust you with their secrets, they inadvertently grant you leverage. Machiavelli never needed to expose anyone. He simply allowed them to recall what they had revealed. He made loyalty feel like an honor, not a mere transaction. The typical manipulator demands unwavering commitment. Machiavelli would never stoop to such tactics. He would present loyalty as a rare invitation, a privilege that few receive, a bond that is earned, never assumed. And when individuals feel they have attained something sacred, they defend it with fervor. But what happens when the tables turn and the loyalty you've cultivated begins to fray? What if the very bonds you've created become the chains that bind you? Stay tuned, as the next chapter reveals the unraveling of control and the unexpected consequences of manipulation. Stay tuned, as the next chapter reveals the unraveling of control and the unexpected consequences of manipulation. When you reward someone's actions, it's often done in a subtle manner. A knowing glance, a rare compliment, or a private reference that only they understand. This makes them feel uniquely chosen, not in a public display, but in an intimate, personal way. Once an individual perceives themselves as selected, their motivation shifts from seeking validation to a desire for retention. They become anxious about losing their place at your table, fearing that you might not need them as much as they need you. This creates a powerful psychological imbalance, where they feel fortunate just to remain in your orbit. This isn't merely influence, it's a hierarchy, one that operates invisibly. Machiavelli understood that guilt could serve as a psychological chain, binding people without them even realizing it. Guilt doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it manifests quietly. A lack of response to a message, a delayed glance, or an air of distance can prompt them to question their actions. They might wonder if they've offended you or lost your respect, and you don't need to confirm their fears. The weight of guilt will compel them to over-apologize, to change their behavior, all in an effort to reclaim the version of you they believe is slipping away. This is the chain that binds them. They sacrifice their own boundaries, reshaping their personalities to align with your comfort, meticulously rehearsing their words before they dare to speak. They mistake this transformation for personal growth, but in truth, it is submission. Machiavelli didn't exert control through direct orders. Instead, he allowed individuals to confine themselves in order to remain in his favor. He understood that the fear of losing someone could replace the need for genuine understanding. You don't need to be understood. You need to instill the fear of loss. By keeping parts of yourself concealed and sharing less than they desire, you create an air of unpredictability that leaves a lasting impression. Consequently, they stop seeking clarity, stop asking questions, and abandon the hope for answers. They realize that pursuing understanding only distances you further, leading them to prefer confusion over loneliness. They adapt, becoming quieter, more cautious, and more agreeable, all under the guise of safety. In reality, it is a learned form of submission. Machiavelli didn't merely inspire a desire for his presence, he instilled a profound fear of existing without him. And that's when you know you've achieved true power. Not when they admire you, but when they shrink themselves just to bask in your light. You've cultivated loyalty, instilled self-doubt, and conditioned their emotions. Yet there remains one final, unexpected move. You vanish, not in anger or as a form of punishment, but with a silence so profound it alters their reality. True Machiavellian power lies not in your presence, but in the aftermath of your departure. You become untouchable, not by remaining in the game, but by stepping away entirely. Disappearing without a word, without explanation, leaves them in a state of uncertainty. They begin to wonder if you've taken offense, replaying every interaction to seek signs they might have missed. This is where power sharpens, as people fixate on unresolved questions. You transform into their greatest enigma, and in their attempts to reclaim your presence, they start to rewrite their own identities. You cease to be just a person. You become a riddle laden with emotional implications. This is the essence of control through absence. Machiavelli understood a crucial truth. Presence can limit respect, while absence defines it. When you are constantly available, they grow accustomed to you. But when you disappear, they are forced to reconstruct their world in search of you. They begin to speak softly, hoping to draw you back into their lives, becoming more strategic in their actions, all while aligning their decisions with your values. Your memory continues to guide them, leading to the highest form of manipulation, silent authority. In this state, you wield control without needing to be seen, heard, or even named. Others will narrate your legacy. You won't tell your own story. You leave behind echoes of your influence, unfinished thoughts, and subtle rules that can't be traced back to you directly. They will recount your lessons, warning others about you while imitating what they believe you would do. You become more than just a memory. You are mythologized. You don't trend, you linger. You don't persuade, you haunt. In every space they enter, your essence precedes them. They might say, "He taught me to think before I speak," or "She was unpredictable," keeping everyone on their toes. You don't demand respect, you carve it into their memories. Machiavelli never sought to be quoted, yet centuries later his wisdom remains alive in our discourse. Become a standard, not merely a person. The loudest voices often fade the quickest, while those who leave no trace are forgotten. Yet, when you transcend being just a person and become an expectation, you cannot be replaced. You transform into the benchmark against which others are measured, the reference point in times of confusion, and the shadow of fear reminding them of what they might lose. Give us a like if you learned at least one new fact that genuinely changed your perspective today. Support high-quality, research-driven content. Subscribe to the channel. And in the next video we'll discover, they gossip, you win. Machiavelli's 5 Ruthless Rules.